Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving into, well, a really crucial part of the global economy, but one you might not think about much.
Right. Often overlooked.
We're talking about non-box trailers.
Yeah, the flatbeds, lowboys. Basically, anything that hauls the stuff that just won't fit in a standard container.
Mm.
Think uh, giant machinery, big construction materials, wind turbine blades.
Exact, that kind of awkward, oversized cargo.
Mm-hmm. And they're absolutely essential for heavy industry, for infrastructure projects, specialized logistics, really the backbone for moving certain kinds of goods.
For sure. And tracking the market for these trailers, well, it actually gives us a surprisingly clear window into global economic activity, into how things are physically moving.
It does. And our source for this deep dive is a pretty comprehensive report from Cognitive Market Research. It covers trends from 2021 and projects all the way out to 2033.
So our goal today is to unpack this report. We want to pull out the key numbers, the trends, look at it region by region, country by country.
And figure out what this growth story in this, specific market tells us about the bigger picture of global trade and investment.
Okay, let's start with that global picture then. What does the report say overall?
Globally, the non-box trailer market generated $709.6 million in revenue back in 2021.
Okay, about 5.7 billion.
Right. And it's projected to hit $7,100 million by 2025.
So 7.1 billion soon.
Exactly. And then keep climbing to reach $979.2 million by 2033. Almost $11 billion.
Wow, that's nearly double the 2021 figure over about 12 years.
It is. And that growth works out to a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of 5.6% for the whole period globally.
5.6% CAGR, that feels like a pretty solid, steady expansion worldwide.
Yeah, it's a healthy pace. Not explosive, but definitely consistent growth.
Okay, so that's the baseline, 5.6% global growth. Now, the interesting part is digging into where that growth is happening. Let's break down the regions based on the report. Where should we start?
Let's start with North America. It's a major market, as you'd expect.
Right. What are the numbers there?
The report puts its value at $193 million in 2021, so roughly $1.6 billion.
Okay.
It's estimated to grow to $1,924.1 million by 2025, and then projecting to hit $254.6 million by 2033.
So significant growth there, too, nearing $3 billion by 2033. What's the regional CAGR?
It's 5.1% for North America.
Okay, 5.1%. A little under the global average of 5.6%, which kind of makes sense for a more mature market, maybe.
That sounds right. Still adding a lot of value, though.
Yeah.
And within North America, the U.S. is, well, clearly the dominant force.
No surprise there.
Its market was $1,315.2 million in 2021.
So the vast majority of the region's total.
Yeah, and projected to reach $331.1 million in 2033. That's a 5% CAGR for the U.S. specifically.
Okay, and what about Canada and Mexico?
The report shows them expanding, too, obviously from smaller starting points. Canada was $171.1 million in 2021, expected to reach $323.7 million by 2033.
And its CAGR.
That was actually a bit higher at 5.5%.
Oh, interesting. Higher than the U.S. rate.
And Mexico, it started at $106.7 million in 2021 and is projected to hit $199.8 million in 2033, growing at 5.2% CAGR.
So Canada's growth rate is actually the fastest of the three in North America, according to these projections.
Yeah, slightly edging out Mexico and the U.S. Could point to maybe specific investments happening there, perhaps in resources or infrastructure, driving that slightly faster pace for this type of equipment.
That's a good point. Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. How does Europe look in the report? Another big market, I assume.
Yes, definitely. Europe's market value was $1,393.1 million in 2021. So a bit smaller than North America at the start, but still very significant.
Okay, almost 1.4 billion. And the projection?
Projected to reach $580.1 million in 2033.
Right, and the regional CGR for Europe?
That comes in at 5.4%, so very close to the global average, slightly higher than North America's rate.
Okay, 5.4%. And I bet we see some variations within Europe, country by country.
Oh, definitely. The report breaks it down. For instance, Germany is showing the highest projected KGR among the European countries listed.
Really? What's Germany's rate?
5.9%. It's expected to grow from $238.2 million in 2021 to $472.2 million in 2033.
Almost doubling. That's strong growth for a major industrial economy like Germany. Fits that idea maybe of mature markets needing updated, efficient equipment.
Exactly. That seems to be the narrative the report suggests, innovation and efficiency driving demand there.
And what about other big European players like the UK or France?
Also showing solid, steady growth, the UK is projected at 5.7% CAGR, reaching $291.6 million by 2033. France is similar, 5.3% CAGR, reaching $299.3 million.
So Germany, UK, France all hovering in that mid to high 5% range. Any outliers?
Well, Italy's CAGR mentioned in the report is the lowest in Europe at 4.6%, still growing from $91.9 million to $149.6 million, but at a slower pace.
Okay.
Then you have Russia and Spain kind of in the middle, around 5.1%, 5.2% CAGR. Russia goes from $193.6 million to $340.6 million. Spain from $87.8 million to $152.2 million.
Got it. The report also mentioned Luxembourg, right?
It did, yeah. Smaller market, $39 million in 2021, projected to hit $64.5 million by 2033. That's a 4.9% CAGR. Though interestingly, the report didn't provide a 2025 midpoint figure for Luxembourg specifically.
Okay. It really shows how even within a region growing at a similar overall rate, the national pictures can differ quite a bit. Different investment cycles, maybe?
Absolutely. Different priorities, different economic conditions, country by country. And it's worth noting the rest of Europe category is also pretty substantial.
Right, the collective group.
Yeah, that bucket grows from $349.7 million in 2021 to $688.9 million in 2033. Its CAGR is 5.6%.
Oh, exactly. The global average, and actually a touch higher than the overall European average we mentioned earlier.
Correct. So significant activity happening across the continent.
Okay, now let's pivot to the region the report highlights as the real engine of growth globally, Asia Pacific.
Yes. This is where the numbers get particularly impressive. The report flags it as one of the fastest growing segments.
What's the overall regional value?
It started at $104 million in 2021. So already the largest region by value back then.
Larger than North America, even in 2021. Okay.
And it's forecasted to more than double, reaching $265.4 million by 2033.
Wow. More than double. What's the CAGR for Asia Pacific then?
It's 6.2%.
Yeah.
Clearly higher than North America's 5.1% and Europe's 5.4%.
Yeah. And I imagine the country breakdown there really tells the story of why it's growing so fast.
Precisely. China, unsurprisingly, is the dominant market within the region. It's expected to grow from $899 million in 2021 to $843.9 million in 2033.
And the CAGR for China?
6.3%. So driving a lot of that regional average.
Makes sense. But the report also highlighted...
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
Driving a lot of that regional average.
Makes sense. But the report also highlighted India, didn't it?
It did. And this is really interesting. India, according to the report data we have, shows the fastest growth rate among all the key countries mentioned globally.
Faster than China's 6.3%.
Yes. India's sales were $372.4 million in 2021, and they're projected to climb sharply to $810.4 million by 2033.
Okay, what's that CAGR?
An impressive 6.7% for India.
6.7%. That really hammers home the point about developing economies investing massively in infrastructure and logistics, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The sheer scale of building and development happening in places like China, and particularly with this growth rate, India, it just demands huge amounts of heavy equipment and materials needing these non-box trailers.
So China and India are the powerhouses. What about other key Asia-Pacific countries?
Japan shows more moderate growth, but still very solid. 5.7% CAGR, reaching $424.8 million by 2033.
Still above the global average.
Yep. South Korea is projected for 5.4% growth, Australia at 5.2%. And Southeast Asia, treated as a group in the report, is also strong at 5.5% CAGR.
So it's broad-based growth across Asia-Pacific, even if China and India are leading the charge with those higher rates.
Exactly. It confirms it's not just those two, but a wider regional trend.
Okay. What about South America? The report mentions progress there, too.
It does, yeah. Though, interestingly, the excerpt we have doesn't provide an overall regional total or CAGR for South America, just country data.
Ah, okay. So what does the country data show?
Brazil stands out as the largest market listed there. It shows strong growth, rising from $110.3 million in 2021 to $267.4 million in 2033.
And the CAGR for Brazil?
That's 6%. So actually one of the higher national KGRs we've seen, close to China's rate.
Wow, okay. Significant activity in Brazil then. What about others?
Argentina sees a steady climb, 5.4% CAGR, going from $37.1 million to $83.3 million. Colombia is projected for 5.8% CAGR, increasing from $24.6 million to $59.1 million.
Solid number.
Yeah. And the report also includes Peru and Chile. For them, it gives the 2021 and 2033 figures, but not the 2025 midpoint. Peru goes from $16.9 million to $37.1 million by 2033.
Okay.
That's a 5.3% CAGR. And Chile rises from $15.3 million to $34.1 million, which is a 5.5% CAGR.
So even without a regional total, the country data definitely paints a picture of expansion across South America, supporting that theme of developing economies needing more logistics capacity.
Precisely. The demand seems consistent there.
All right, last region mentioned, the Middle East and Africa. What do the reports say there? Similar data limitations.
Yeah, similar situation to South America. No overall regional numbers or CAGR in the excerpt we saw. And also, no 2025 projections for the specific countries mentioned here, just the 2021 start and the 2033 endpoint.
Okay, so just the long-term growth picture. What countries did it highlight?
It gives figures for Egypt and Turkey. Egypt shows more moderate growth compared to other regions, from $37.2 million in 2021 to $61 million in 2033. That's a 4% CAGR.
Okay, 4%.
Turkey is slightly higher, projected to increase from $31.2 million to $56.3 million over that period, which is a 4.5% CAGR.
All right, and there was a rest of Middle East category, too.
Yes. That's expected to rise from $55.2 million to $91.6 million, with a 4.2% CAGR.
So growth is happening, but maybe at a slightly slower clip compared to, say, Asia Pacific or even Europe and North America, based on these specific examples.
That's what this data suggests, yes. And it's worth pointing out again, the region is named Middle East and Africa, but the data points here are specifically Middle Eastern countries. We don't have specific African country data from this part of the report.
Right, an important clarification based on the source material provided. Okay, so we've gone around the globe, looked at the numbers. North America and Europe steady, Asia Pacific booming, South America growing strongly, Middle East showing more moderate growth. Let's try to synthesize this. What's the so what? Why are we seeing this consistent, broad-based growth basically everywhere for these specialized trailers?
Well, the report really connects it back to those fundamental economic drivers we touched on. A huge part is definitely the developing economies. They're investing heavily in infrastructure,
Yes.
roads, ports, energy projects, factories.
And all that building requires moving massive, often non-standard components.
Exactly. You need these non-box trailers for that. So that investment directly fuels demand.
Makes sense. But what about the mature markets, like North America and Europe? Their growth is still solid, even if the CIRs are slightly lower than Asia Pacific's. What's driving it there, according to the report?
There, the report points more towards innovation and a focus on improving performance and efficiency.
Ah, okay. So maybe replacing older fleets or needing more specialized trailers for new types of cargo or logistics challenges, higher capacity maybe, fuse efficiency.
Could be all of that.
Yeah.
It suggests the demand isn't just for more trailers necessarily, but potentially for better, more advanced, or more specialized non-box trailers, handling complex jobs, meeting environmental regs, that kind of thing.
So you have two different but complementary drivers. Sheer volume and infrastructure build out in developing regions, and efficiency and innovation push in more mature markets.
That seems to be the core conclusion from the source, yeah.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of a market with really broad-based drivers, suggesting a pretty dynamic future for the industry globally. It's not just one thing pushing it forward.
And for you listening, really understanding this niche market non-box trailers, it gives you this unique insight into those much larger global economic currents. That projected growth we talked about, country by country, it's not just a transport industry statistic. It's reflecting the real pace of global trade, how manufacturing is shifting, the scale of physical development happening worldwide.
It really underscores how these, seemingly mundane parts of the supply chain can be incredibly telling indicators of broader economic health and direction.
Yeah. We've seen how this specific market, the one focused on moving the biggest, bulkiest, most awkward stuff, is actually set for really significant and pretty consistent growth right across the world.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. If the humble non-box trailer market is growing so steadily, almost universally, what does that signal about the underlying strength and pace of global economic activity, particularly our reliance on moving physical goods?
And thinking about that innovation angle.
Right. What new kinds of specialized trailers might we see emerge in the next decade to handle even bigger, more complex loads or to do it more sustainably?
Definitely something to watch. So next time you see one of those flatbeds or lowboys on the highway, remember it's telling a bigger story. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something you see all the time, but maybe don't think about too much. Logistics, specifically, non-box trailers.
Yeah, that specific corner of the transport world. We've gone through all the material you sent over, and we're ready to dig into the market, the trends, everything shaping it.
Right. So the mission today, based on that info, is to really get a handle on what these things are, why they seem to be getting, well, more important for certain jobs, the roadblocks they hit, and also the cool stuff coming down the line.
Exactly. Innovations and challenges both.
Because, you see a flatbed on the road, maybe carrying some giant piece of equipment, and you think, okay, platform on wheels.
Simple.
Yeah, seems simple. But the sources you share, they really show there's quite a bit of engineering, a lot of planning, and some complex market stuff going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. It's surprisingly intricate.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Starting with, well, what's driving the demand right now, according to your stuff?
Okay, yeah. So one of the clearest things coming out of the sources is just this growing need for, let's call it specialized transport.
Right.
Your standard box trailer.
Yeah.
Great for pallets, standard goods, but useless, really, if you're dealing with something, huge or super heavy or just weirdly shaped.
Like those massive wind turbine blades or giant concrete beams for a bridge project. You can't exactly slide those into a box.
Exactly. Perfect examples. Industries like heavy construction, energy, aerospace, even some manufacturing, they're constantly moving these enormous components that just, well, they defy normal containers.
Uh-huh.
So your sources really highlight how the open design, the flexibility of non-box trailers,
Yeah.
Flatbeds, step decks, those really low boys with tons of axles, that's what gives the essential room to handle these unique shapes and sizes. No walls, no roof getting in the way.
So basically, if the cargo won't fit the standard mold, the trailer has to adapt to the cargo.
That's it, precisely. And linked right into that, the sources point to the big boom in global infrastructure projects. All the new roads, railways, power plants.
Yeah, you see construction everywhere.
Right. And when governments and big companies are pouring money into these massive builds, the sheer size and amount of materials needed, it just demands something beyond standard shipping containers.
I get it. All the structural steel, those big prefab sections, heavy machinery like cranes, they all need this kind of specialized hauling. What do the sources say about how these trailers fit into that specific picture?
The material points out their adaptability isn't just, fitting the load on the trailer. It's also about how useful they are on the actual job site. They can often handle rougher ground better, and it's easier to load or unload really heavy stuff using cranes or ramps compared to, say, a loading dock.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Using cranes or ramps compared to, say, a loading dock situation. So they become vital right there at the point of construction.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just the highway journey, it's integrating with the whole project's flow. Anything else driving growth based on your research?
Yes. Another thing the material really brings out is this trend towards modular and really customized trailer setups. It's not just, give me a flatbed anymore.
Customization. For hauling heavy stuff, how does that work?
So instead of just a basic flatbed, companies are asking for things like adjustable axle groups that help spread the weight correctly for different road rules, or removable goosenecks so heavy machinery can drive right onto the front.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, or hydraulic suspensions to lift and lower the deck. The sources suggest this customization is a huge factor now because it directly boosts how efficiently they can operate and helps them meet all the different regulations state to state or country to country.
So it's less about the category of trailer and more about the specific features on it, tailored to the job. If you haul weird stuff, your trailer needs to be weird too, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Needs to be specialized. But as your material definitely flags, it's not all smooth sailing. There are some real challenges.
Right. Let's get into those. What's the big one?
Absolutely. A major operational headache highlighted in the sources is, well, the obvious lack of cargo protection.
Because it's open.
Exactly. Unlike an enclosed van, these trailers leave the cargo totally exposed. Rain, snow, sun, road grime, dust, everything.
Which means if you're hauling anything sensitive or valuable, you need extra steps.
Precisely. You often have to spend time and money on heavy tarps, maybe shrink wrapping, sometimes even custom crates. That adds cost and, frankly, hassle compared to just shutting the doors on a box trailer.
And the actual loading, I imagine getting a giant, oddly shaped piece of machinery onto a lowboy isn't like using a forklift with pallets.
No, you're spot on. Loading comes up in the sources is another big challenge. It takes more skill, more time.
Right.
Securing something huge or irregular isn't just about placing it. It's meticulous balancing, careful weight distribution checks, and really rigorously using chains, straps, the right anchor points.
Because if you get that wrong, it's not just inefficient, it's potentially catastrophic.
Yeah, exactly that. A load that shifts or falls is a massive safety risk. Damage to the cargo, the trailer, other drivers. Huge liability issues.
Oh.
So it demands trained people and very careful planning.
Okay, so operational stuff like protection and loading. You also mentioned regulations earlier. Given the kind of loads we're talking about, oversized, overweight, I bet permits are a nightmare.
Oh, absolutely. Your sources confirm that.
Yeah.
Because these trailers so often handle loads outside standard limits, they face really strict rules. Moving them often needs special permits for each state or region. You might be restricted to certain travel times, maybe need escort vehicles, and definitely careful route planning to avoid low bridges or roads with weight limits.
So tons of paperwork and less flexibility in scheduling trips.
Exactly. It adds administrative burden, costs more for the permits and escorts, and can really slow down delivery times and make things less predictable.
Okay, right. So strong growth drivers from specialized needs and big projects, but also these significant breaks related to exposure, tricky loading, and regulatory hoops. Feels like a sector that's kind of pushing and pulling at the same time, ready for some changes.
Definitely. And that's where it gets interesting looking at the future trends your material points to.
Yeah, what innovations are coming?
Well, on the upside, the sources show a sector that's really starting to lean into technology, specifically telematics and smart sensors.
You mean like putting IoT devices right on the trailer itself? What kind of stuff can they track?
Think beyond just GPS location, though that's part of it. We're talking real-time monitoring of tire pressure, brake health, how the suspension is handling the load, maybe even sensors to detect if the cargo itself is shifting mid-journey.
Wow, okay.
Your sources suggest this isn't just tracking, it's about using that data predictively for better maintenance, for catching load security issues before they become dangerous, and just making the whole fleet run smarter.
That really does sound like it could change the game for managing these high-value, complex hauls, especially over long distances. What else stood out in the research trends?
A really significant emerging area is renewables, the energy sector.
Ah, okay. How so?
As the world builds more wind farms, more solar installations, think about the components. Those enormous turbine blades we mentioned, tower sections, huge racks of solar panels, they are exactly the kind of oversized, awkward cargo non-box trailers are made for.
Right, yeah.
So your sources indicate that the whole logistics chain for clean energy is directly boosting demand and pushing innovation in this trailer market, often needing to get stuff to pretty remote, difficult locations too.
That's a really cool link. Clean energy needs driving specialized truck tech. Any advances in the actual trailers, like what they're made of?
Yep, the material points to a definite push for sustainability and better durability through new materials. We're seeing more use of things like high-strength aluminum alloys, advanced composites.
Lighter trailers mean the truck uses less fuel, I guess?
It's exactly that. Better fuel efficiency, lower emissions. Plus, these newer materials often resist corrosion much better, which is a big deal for trailers out in all weather. Maybe carrying stuff that could be corrosive. Helps the environment and the operator's costs for maintenance and lifespan. A win-win.
Yeah, definitely not a static market. It's being shaped by these big industrial demands, by tech breakthroughs, and this global move towards sustainability. Seems like way more going on than just a flat piece of metal on wheels.
That really sums up the key takeaway from your sources, I think. Yes, there are clear challenges, operational, regulatory, but the core adaptability of these trailers combined with the innovation happening, especially in tech and materials, it positions them for pretty significant evolution, particularly as the world economy keeps needing to move bigger and more specialized things.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this deep dive into your source material really mean for you, our listener?
Well, now that you've heard about the complexity, right? Why these trailers are so vital for moving everything from building parts to wind turbines, the hurdles they face, the smart tech coming, maybe start noticing them more when you're out and about. See if you can spot the different types, the flatbeds, the step decks, the really low ones. Think about why a particular trailer might be carrying that specific load. Appreciate the whole logistical dance involved in getting those massive items where they need to be.
It does change how you see them on the road, definitely. Not quite so mundane anymore. Absolutely. And maybe here's a final thought to chew on, kind of building on those trends your sources brought up. Think about this increasing global need for super customized, oversized transport. Combine that with this rapid integration of smart monitoring, data analytics. How might that completely redefine not just the trailers, but the whole process of planning, moving, and tracking complex cargo in just a few years, especially as these global projects keep getting bigger and more ambitious?
It's a really dynamic space, and it's not slowing down.
It certainly isn't. Well, thank you for digging through those sources and joining us for this deep dive.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.